The synergy is off the charts with the party composition that I will show you today. If you need a party to demolish honor mode to the point you become weary if you've actually selected honor mode and not story mode, this is your party. First of all, we have Mr. Immortal himself in this party. Yes, it has been done, and it gets very scary with this one. But before we talk about that guy, we need to talk about the ballast banishing paladin first, which we need to start off with, as this insanely overpowered monster and smiter is going to function as the glue for the party. The ballast banishing paladin is an ultra bursty melee DPS striker with elements of a controller. Having the ability to use powerful crowd control on a mere bonus action thanks to our gear setup allows us to control the entire battlefield like it's nothing, and accordingly make great use of said crowd control to give us guaranteed critical hits and nuclear damage output, not just for the paladin but for the entire team. The ballast banishing paladin, however, is built in such a way that all crowd control is guaranteed applied thanks to the helmet of arcane acuity. Yes, that is what is on our head with this build, and using various modifiers the damage output then becomes ridiculous for a melee DPS striker. But the ballast banishing paladin wears a certain armor piece called the ballast armor, which is going to double all of our piercing damage. Not just for the paladin himself, by the way, which already has a huge two-handed trident that profits very well from multiple feats in the game that, thanks to the double damage bonus from ballast armor, will deal even more ridiculous damage, but it also applies to all other party members, hence why the duo between the banishing ballast paladin and the deathslinger is the world's most dangerous duo. Nobody can stop these guys when they fight alone, but combined, well, let's say nothing is safe anymore. See, the deathslinger throws weapons that all deal piercing damage, but the deathslinger is a ranged DPS striker that is rarely going to be in the face of our enemies. The ballast banishing paladin fixes that by always being up front and close to its targets, making all targets enter the ballast armor's aura of murder, which is going to double all piercing damage. Considering the ballast banishing paladin has amazing movement thanks to various elements and just general amazing presence due to its kit and control, he'll set up perfectly for our deathslinger. Accordingly, our deathslinger will one-shot enemies thanks to its own kit and optimization of making sure our deathslinger has amazing damage as well. The deathslinger is a multi-class build between a berserker, a thief, and an eldritch knight. It is, in my opinion, the best way to build a thrower type of build, as it just has it all: a lot of critical hits, crowd control, ranged sustained damage, tavern brawler goodness, and the ability to throw up to 6 times a turn, not considering external modifiers. The way I made the deathslinger is that this build also has amazing sustain and defense through high armor class, which makes enemies miss you a lot, as well as great saving throw saves, so annoying spells and CC doesn't apply that often to the deathslinger. Having such sustain on a character that can attack from anywhere and everywhere at any time is, yeah, very deadly, especially when the attack themselves attack for such high numbers in the first place. The deathslinger and the banishing ballast paladin deliberately use weapons that have lightning and thunder damage ingrained respectively. This is where Mr. Immortal himself comes into play, because he's going to buff them even more to the next level. See, Mr. Immortal has the ability to make everything wet and frozen, wetness being a modifier for doubling the damage of all lightning damage, which is exactly what the deathslinger's main weapon, the lightning jabber, has as an additional effect. Yes, it has lightning damage inside of this thing, and making many enemies at the same time wet is a one cast type of deal and only consumes a low level spell slot at most. But our ice mage can also straight up freeze enemies, either through just using cold spells naturally or by using the very easy to do combo with Morning Frost. Morning Frost gives us the potential to chill targets every time we use cold spells, and when an enemy is chilled, if you then make them accordingly wet through Create Water, they will simply instantly freeze. When an enemy is frozen, they can't do anything, but they also become vulnerable to 2 very important damage types: Force and Thunder damage. This sets up perfectly for our ballast banishing paladin, because remember what weapon I gave to our paladin? Nirulna, which has thunder damage ingrained, so all of that gets doubled, but it gets even better. Remember what the banishing in the name refers to? Banishing Smite, the trophy smite of the build that we got at level 10 bar through magical secrets. Banishing Smite can in itself already one-shot enemies and deal absolutely insane damage, and it stacks with Divine Smite as well, giving you huge burst. Hundreds of HP within a single attack gone from your enemy. But when all of that force damage gets doubled with the frozen effect, well, yes, I think you're seeing where I'm going. 5d10 damage doubled, the damage becomes nuclear, making the synergy synergy between our banishing ballast paladin, deathslinger and Mr. Immortal absolutely off the charts. It is essentially like a perfect positive correlation where they simply just boost each other and make each other more and more powerful. But Mr. Immortal is also an Ice Wizard assassin, like you may or may not know, so aside from boosting others, he has the capability to just do amazing damage with a variety of ice spells. He can nuke entire battlefields with a variety of ice spells that all have their own use cases, or strike very efficiently single target threats and obliterate them without even using spell slots. It embraces the idea of an ice mage perfectly, but what makes Mr. Immortal immortal is the mix of going abjuration for its subclass, our multi-class distribution that I elaborated on extensively in my video about this guy, and having defensive spells permanently applied, which gives him insane defenses that will simply result into us never taking damage. Then he's built in such a way that his defense is also offense, since he will also simultaneously use spells like Armor of Aethys and the chill version of Fire Shield, which will make us deal insane retaliatory damage. We can just take out enemies on their turn by simply existing this way, as every time we get hit, they will take a bunch of damage, and on our turn we can intentionally proc opportunity attacks to annihilate them as well. So we don't even have to cast anything on our turn to kill enemies with this wizard, we just simply need to move. But overall, the combination of damage, control and defense makes Mr. Immortal a frontliner, a controller and a blaster all in one, so you're not confined to traditional D&D roles with this team setup either, but making it a very versatile and powerful way to build a team. The control in this case comes from the fact that he can freeze enemies but also make entire battlefields ice fields, basically, where the ground is completely covered in ice and enemies have a really hard time moving, and if they do move, they potentially fall prone, giving you another status effect that you can abuse. So while there's good synergies between the different party members within the Immortal Ice Wizard build, it already gets really crazy. It is built in such a way that it honestly has an answer for any combat situation and loops to great efficiency with how every single element of the build synergizes with each other. I definitely made sure of that, but then the question remains, what is the role of the Moon Druid with this party? First of all, he complements the CC of our wizard perfectly, as our Moon Druid is specialized in large area crowd control through insanely powerful spells like, for example, Spike Growth, Sleet Storm and Plant Growth. Some of those already eat away all HP from our enemies just by them trying to maneuver over these fields, but of course things become even worse if you combine the CC of the Druid with the CC of our Ice Wizard, and then our Deathslinger, which can also shoot everything prone, and our Ballast Paladin, which has a bunch of enchantment based crowd control that you can use on enemies on the areas that are being modified by our Druid. It is a very deadly combo. Basically, this results in a lot of successful crowd control stacking between our various party members for the ultimate control, because they pretty much affect all enemies at the same time. But to make things better, I made sure in all the builds that every party member is covered for all this difficult terrain, for example through utilizing different boots as shown on screen for different party members that all essentially negate such terrain effects. So we are basically immune to these difficult terrain effects, which will mostly just make life for our enemies hard instead of ours. But that is just the beginning of what makes our Moon Druid shine. Now the real specialty of Moon Druids is obviously the many shape-shifting forms that they can take on. Many forms that you really just have to watch my video on to get how insanely powerful and versatile this class gets. We're talking animals, myrmidons, everything. But to summarize it in one sentence, the Moon Druid can do everything and cover every instance of combat, and I'm not exaggerating when I make those statements. We also then optimize our Moon Druid by taking 2 dips in Sorcerer and Cleric to really push it to the next level, giving us even more attacks per turn on top of our already 3 attacks per turn, as well as very useful spells that can stick even in wild shaping form. Now the Moon Druid has various forms that also deal piercing damage, like the Dilophosaurus or the Panther or the Tiger, that all synergize with the Ballast armor of our Ballast Banishing Paladin. And then the Moon Druid already has great accuracy and damage thanks to wild shaping forms working with Tavern Brawler, so from an offensive perspective the build is amazing. But what makes the Moon Druid especially useful for honor mode is its capability to just tank, and tank. It has literally several hundreds of HP before your Moon Druid gets downed, as the enemy has to go through multiple layers of your wild shaping forms before they get to kill you, and you get up to 9 wild shapes with my setup and this party composition, because our Ballast Banishing Paladin being a bard as well means we get another extra short rest, which gives our Moon Druid in turn additional wild shape forms. To summarize all the synergies that I've talked about in this video, I have visualized them on screen. There are so many connections between these various party members that the overall level of synergy is just mind-boggling, and you will have an amazing time clearing honor mode. Honestly, even if you just take one of these, they can probably just solo honor mode if you have a decent understanding of the game. But the 4 of them combined, oh boy, nothing is safe anymore. For the face of your party, I recommend you to use a charisma based build, so in this case it will be yet again the paladin, and this time I also made sure there's not a single gear piece that overlaps between the builds, while every build in turn has a completely optimized gear set. For all the information, intricacies, details, just everything you need to know to make these builds and accordingly progress smoothly with them, check the 4 videos out for each mentioned build. Links will be in the description, and for those that like written guides, I have those as well on my Patreon. Check it out if you're interested in that or just want to support the channel. But otherwise, you watching the video, giving it a like, subscribing, all those things are more than enough support. Thank you all for watching.